Hello there, boys and girls, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Front Office Playbook. I am Colin Henderson. Joining me today, Eli Danson and Adam Datema. We've emerged from our March Madness caves and are back to discuss the biggest offseason moves around the NFL. Before we do, how busted are the brackets, boys?
Done. Night one, I was done.
Night one.
Yeah.
Just-
It was bad because I don't know any basketball, but I'll still, fill it out, pick a few upsets, and be like, oh, if I get this one right, then no one else is going to get this, and a few homer picks. But again, it's like 3 years in a row. Night one, it's just been like I'm second to last place in my group.
Well, this is why I invite you to all of my bracket challenges. Eli, how's yours?
Mine is doing great. I still got all 8 Elite Eight teams, all 4 Final Four teams, and both final teams still in.
Pretty good.
Well, if you had all 4 Final Four
Yeah.
teams, you've got both of the finalists in there too. But yeah,
Yeah, it would
I
make
mean,
sense.
rack up the stats as
Who you
much
got
as
in
you
the finals then?
Duke, Auburn.
Duke,
Which,
Auburn.
as a UNC alum, breaks my heart. But Cooper Flag is just that.
Yeah,
good.
they look laughably good. Just absolutely laughably good. I forget the guy Proctor. I think this is the shooter who I think is like 13 for 15 from behind the arc. Just absolute nonsense. My brackets are doing just fine, and more importantly, the betting budget is also doing just fine after week 1. So let's keep that going into week 2. At least for Eli and I, and Dama, you can just enjoy the games, I guess.
Yeah, there's a reason I didn't sign up for your paid league.
Well, you're encouraged every year to do so. Please.
Yeah, I know.
I will happily accept your donations. If this is your first time with us here at the Front Office Playbook, please allow us to welcome you in the first place. We are here to talk through every major move around the NFL with a highlight on the most important position in all of sports, at least in our mind, the general manager. Some can play, some can coach, but few can put together a championship roster. So be sure to hang out with us on all of our social channels as we follow the NFL GM schedule, from off-season to draft, and from OTAs to kickoff. Coming up on the show today, we're going to discuss the Giants' ever-evolving quarterback situation that we finally got some guidance on over the past week. New England spends some money and grabs their new wide receiver 1, and what our contract offers would be to the top free agents still available to sign. Let's start with the New York Giants quarterback situation. Up until, if you had spoke to us a week ago, Tommy DeVito was the only quarterback on the Giants roster. That has now changed. The quarterback room got real busy real quick. On March 21st, the Giants signed Jameis Winston to a 2-year, $8 million contract. Honestly, I assume that was a 1-year deal for $8 million because $4 million a year for I don't care if it's a third-string quarterback, still feels like an absolute steal. Even then, Jameis Winston isn't good, but that still is $4 million. That is pretty surprising. Only to be followed up later. All right is about as good as I'll allow you to have that. Giants 4 days later also sign Russell Wilson to a 1-year, $21 million contract, $10.5 million of it guaranteed. For those wondering, that $21 million contract puts Wilson right in the middle of NFL's quarterbacks from a contractual situation. His average annual value of 21 ranks 20th league-wide, 1 spot behind Geno Smith, and 1 spot ahead of former teammate Justin Fields at $20 million. So, Adam, why don't you talk us through, let's break down a little bit. Let's get into this from the Giants' perspective. Obviously, we know how important the quarterback position is for the Giants entering 2025 and how completely unsettled it had been up until this moment. Make not 1, but 2 moves to improve the quarterback room, add veterans. Obviously, this is a win now year, at least as the ownership has dictated. This is a win now year for a team coming off 3 wins. How do you see the Giants? First off, talk to me through these 2 signings, and then what comes next? Is there a next for the Giants in the quarterback?
Not for, in the quarterback room, there will be a next year. It will be 3 new quarterbacks in the room, and it'll be a new head coach and new GM. I think Vegas had the win total at the Giants at 3.5 before the Russell Wilson signing, and after the Russell Wilson signing, it was 3.5. This doesn't move the needle for me. Like Russell Wilson is a better quarterback than Jameis Winston. At some point this season, Giants fans will be screaming for Jameis Winston. They will be incredibly bored of a passing attack that it's going to probably have Travis Hunter and Malik Neighbors and not look that great. Again, Russell Wilson, good quarterback, but we saw last year he is not able to deal with a bad offensive line anymore. And Jameis isn't better, but Jameis is more exciting. And I don't think that signing Russell to that deal, signing Jameis to the deal, I think you could have gotten similar production from a quarterback in this draft had you drafted Travis Hunter at 3 and then taken Jackson Dart, Tyler Shuck, whoever it may be, who's the guy, Quinn Ewers out of Texas. There's a few guys in the second round that I think could, kind of putter their way to a 7 to 9 win season behind a strong roster had you spent that money elsewhere. And I don't think that Russell Wilson is going to win you enough games to save your job. So honestly, for the team, it might be the right move just in terms of staying competitive. But for the GM and head coach, I do not believe it was the right move for either of those. Maybe more so the Jameis signing, because I think Shedeur could have come in and competed with him and then maybe taken the job halfway through the season. And, if they go on a run because of a strong roster behind them, and even if they don't make the playoffs, maybe that saves Daboll and Shane's job. But, Jameis and Russ, you're not taking Shedeur after that. So, no. Sorry, guys.
I mean, I wouldn't be so sure to immediately write off Shedeur at 3. I think one thing I take from these signings is that they're both very much for this season. And one way, if your win-loss record at the end of this year, if we're talking from Jones Shane's position, because that's what we are, this is a GM podcast, if we're talking from his position, he needs to sell a future to ownership. And if win-losses can't come this year, we've spoken about in the past about how brutal the Giants' schedule is in 2025. If win-losses can't be found, the way that he's going to save his job and the way that Daboll is going to try and save his job is to sell a future. And so I still think there's very much a chance that the Giants go quarterback at number 3, while I might disagree with the position, and I'd rather a draft best available, maybe trade back into the first round if you want to get a Jackson Dart, or take a flyer on some of those quarterbacks you just mentioned. I don't think this rules out a quarterback at number 3. I think you can say, and let's just use Shedeur as the example. If Shedeur is the draft pick at number 3, great. We can sit him for 8, 9, 10, 15, 16 weeks. We can sit him the entire year if we wanted to and still feel like, okay, well, next year we have something going. Again, if I'm sitting in front of Mara and Tish as Joe Shane, that is how I am trying to justify my job if the win-loss record is not where it needs to be.
So then how many games does the combination of Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, how many games do they have to win next year for Shane and Daboll to keep their jobs?
I'm not sure win-losses is exactly the right way to phrase this, as much as it should be the way to phrase it. I think it's going to be, what does this team look like? Is this team look like the arrow was pointing up? Because we've seen ownership very happy, and they'll squint to see the arrow pointing up. If the arrow is pointing up on this team, I think there is enough world where they say, we don't want to change something that's working. That's basically was the excuse coming out of last year. Hey, we like the draft class. We like where this is going. We're not ready to pull the plug yet. I think that would be more important than win-losses. Eli, what do you feel about this?
I think it's a fascinating pairing of a quarterback skill set with the receiver talent that he has. So last year, Russell on the Steelers moonballs, right? We know that's pretty much all he can do now is moonballs to wide receivers. And now he's paired with Wandale Robinson, who had 140 targets last year, who doesn't get a target past the 3 yards past the line of scrimmage. Malik Neighbors, who's a great deep ball guy, but he's more of that kind of intermediate Justin Jefferson demon. And Slayton, who also could stretch the field, but is not known as this big vertical threat. So it seems like a poor match of this quarterback skill set with the skill talent that he has on the roster. Now, this is also Joe Shane going to the plate and striking out like 17 times in a row. He couldn't get any of the quarterbacks in the draft last year. He couldn't find a good veteran for the team last offseason. Now he comes into this offseason and misses on every veteran player. Can't get up to number 1. So what else is he supposed to do? Right? He cannot go into the season. As much as we love Jameis, and as fun as it is to watch Jameis Winston play football, you cannot put him as the starting quarterback on this team and reasonably convince the players that this is a serious team here to compete and win. And that matters in the locker room. Right? When the team knows that this season is a wash going into it, culturally, that is a very poor place to be as an organization. So bringing in a veteran like Russ, it's not the guy we would have liked for the Giants. It is more money than you would have liked to pay for a player of Russ's skill set at this point. He's pushed into a corner. At this point, Russ had the leverage of being able to get $21 million a year for his contract.
I think $21 million feels about right. I don't feel like that's an overpay. And Adam, I'll let you jump in here for a second, but I mean, again, 20th league wide in AAV, that feels about right. If I'm talking about Russell Wilson's ability, it's a 1-year deal, so you're not locked into anything crazy. I mean, I think 20 million, if you're going to ask someone to be your starting quarterback for at least half the season, minimum, if not the entire season, I think someone of Russell Wilson's caliber, I think is worth about 20 million when we look at, we look at the big name free agent of Sam Darnold, who signed in this offseason, obviously 2 completely different situations, but he gets 33 million a year. So, I mean, a third of that contract, that feels about right.
Yeah, that's fair. And most of the players below Russ are rookies. So in terms of starting quarterback market, he is at the bottom. The question is, do you consider Russ a starting level quarterback in the league now? Personally, right, I'm a GM looking at this team. I don't see him as a viable starter anymore with his skill set and his ability to play. Last year, he was 32nd in catchable throw percentage to receivers while having the 5th best turnover throw weight, where I mean, he wasn't putting the ball in harm's way. And with that, when he was throwing it to the receivers, he couldn't throw it accurately to them relative to the rest of the league. And that is the number one job of the quarterback, especially with precision players like Wandale and Neighbors, who are big yak guys.
Yeah, I'll go back real quick just again to the point of Russ no longer can avoid sacks like he used to. Really did struggle at times behind the O-line in Pittsburgh last year, which isn't as good as we may imagine a Pittsburgh O-line to be. But also, what does he do best? Those moon balls. Absolutely. Now, I'll argue a little with what you said earlier. I think Slayton is a very established deep threat receiver. I think that's pretty much going to be his job in the league. After his rookie contract, I don't think he's going to be signed to do a whole lot else. He can. He's solid at other things. But deep threat is really where he separates himself. The issue is in MetLife, especially in the winter, oh my God, that wind. And if you're getting older and your arm strength isn't what it used to be, and you're relying on balls that are going to be in the air for longer than anyone else's passes to be the thing that separates you, I don't know if MetLife is the stadium to do that in. So I don't think Russ was the right signing. Rodgers would have been a better signing. He had to deal with MetLife all of last year. I was at the MetLife game where the Jets played the Rams. It was the coldest I have ever been in my life, and Rodgers played well. So based on that alone, Rodgers has more credibility to me in that weather. But again, based on more than just my own anecdotes, the moon balls don't seem like a viable strategy for winning 9+ games in MetLife. And I don't think if the Giants have an 8-win season, regardless of what it looks like, if they do it with an old quarterback who's not going to be on the team next year, or an old quarterback who gets replaced by Jameis Winston for the last however many games, I don't think the head coach or the GM keep their job even in a very, loyal Giants organization. So
I'll tell you right now,
reason,
if they win 7 games with these quarterbacks, they keep their job. I think that would imply
really?
That would imply to the rest of the roster that the rest of the roster is so strong or has overperformed the way that it has, that they're winning games. That they're winning games despite not particularly impressive quarterback play. And if that's the case, then now we can say, okay, or at least now Joe Shane can then go to ownership after the end of the season and say, hey, look, the skeleton is there. We just need to stick a different head on top of it. But the skeleton is there, and we can make this Frankenstein monster work. So I think
And
if
it
you're talking
very
7-8 wins, you're there.
it could very much be a sort of Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes situation for the
Absolutely.
Giants this year. Not saying that Shador is Patrick at all.
Whoa.
That's not the point. The point is a 1-year veteran quarterback for your rookie to learn under and then step in the next year and take over the franchise.
If they go
let's
at number
also-
3.
Yes.
Let's also not compare Russell Wilson now to what Alex Smith was the year before he
Not the
relinquished duties to Patrick Mahomes. Alex Smith was much better at that point than Russell Wilson currently is.
Okay.
So
Analogies.
I don't know
Analogies.
that Russell.
We're not doing like for likes here. But
No,
yes.
I know. So, like, I don't know that Russell Wilson would be able to hold off Shador the whole season. I think, that win total from Vegas stayed at 3.5 when Russell got signed there. So, like, they start off 2-5. You think the fans aren't screaming for Shador at that point?
No. Yes. So let me put it to you this way. Enough. Let's put the hypotheticals aside for a second, or at least in that sense. If you are Joe Schoen, you have now signed 2 quarterbacks. You have 3 quarterbacks in your quarterback room. Are you drafting a Shador Sanders at number 3? Are you trying to trade back into the first to get a Jackson Dart and the back end of the first, which feels like that's where most people project? Are you holding on and just picking a day 2 quarterback instead? At some point, a quarterback's going to get drafted to this team. It would baffle my mind if they didn't. So essentially, at what point are you looking, if you're the GM, at what point are you looking to add a quarterback to this room in the draft?
Go for it, Eli.
So if I'm Joe Schoen at this point, and I'm not a Shador guy, I think he's about a second round talent. If he was there at 3, I'm going to take Shador for a couple of reasons. One, you have faced the same situation for 2 off seasons in a row. Not taking a quarterback at 3 is putting yourself in that same potential position next year. Let's say that he's there, right? And secondly, you never know when you'll have the opportunity to take these guys. They are the most valuable position in all of sports, right? So if you have an opportunity to take someone, you need to take it. And having that cost control on the roster next season is too valuable to pass up at number 3.
Yeah, I am going to baffle Colin by saying no, we don't draft a quarterback. I think if you've made the decision
Period.
to sign Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston at this point, you're just saying, I got to save my job. How do we get as many wins as possible? What players do we put around Russell Wilson to either lock up the O-line and make sure that he can just stand back there and moonball forever? Or, what do we put on this defense to just smother teams and make sure, they did a pretty good job on the defense in free agency. I don't hate the Giants defense right now. So if they were to go defense with those first 2 picks, I think they could turn it into a very good defense. And I think that turns Russell Wilson into an acceptable quarterback.
Okay. Let's talk about the other quarterback we just briefly mentioned here. As we talk about, you said Aaron Rodgers would be a better fit for MetLife. Well, it doesn't seem like Aaron Rodgers wanted to play with the Giants. So, it takes 2 to tango, and it certainly seems like he was standing on the sidelines. So if that's the case, Giants were almost forced to a certain extent to add, because they need to add some version of a veteran presence. So Russell Wilson almost seemed like the logical choice there. Now, with the Giants off the board, Aaron Rodgers has pretty much circled Pittsburgh as his destination, or his potential destination for him to land. Now, we know him from a contractual negotiation standpoint, there's not a whole lot of suitors for him out there. There's not a whole lot of homes for him to have. Now, he can always play the, I'll just retire card. But if he has a genuine desire to come play in the NFL this year, it sure seems like Pittsburgh is the spot. What does that do not only in terms of kind of player and fit for a team, but also what is the contract that you would conceivably offer Aaron Rodgers, knowing that he doesn't have a lot of other places to go, but also I need a quarterback. I just spent DK Metcalf. I have George Pickens. I have a really good offense looking. I need someone to run this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would think certainly above Russ, right? And certainly above Justin Fields would be what Rodgers is going to demand and what you would pay as the GM of the Steelers to have Rodgers be your starting quarterback. He is not the first ballot All-Pro first ballot Hall of Famer quarterback anymore. We all agree to that. He is still a capable starter, right? With if he has a good offensive line in front of him. With that said, and the talent that the Steelers have in their aging defense, have band-aided the quarterback position for the last 5 years since Ben retired. You missed on Kenny Pickett. Russ and Justin were not the long-term answers that you were looking for. So you are going to put in a stopgap here, what it costs. It gives you a competitive chance in the AFC.
Agree. Rodgers does give you a chance. It does look like they're going that direction, assuming Rodgers still wants to play. If I were the Steelers and I made the Rodgers move, just looking at the rest of the roster, the defense actually could use a little more help than we may think of the Steelers defense needing. Offensive line as well, but does look like they got the receiver set. So personally, they seem to be all in on this Rodgers move. I would still go probably Jackson Dart in the first round if I was the Steelers and make that the Rodgers, Jordan Love, the Alex Smith, Mahomes, the Brady, Garoppolo, if you want to throw that one in there too. I would, because everything I hear about Jackson Dart is he's got the leadership, he's got the mental, it just, the physical doesn't always show up. And I mean, the Steelers drafted Kenny Pickett. They drafted him in the first round. He did not have the physical, decent athlete, but, didn't have the huge arm. He had the little hands that became a whole thing. So I don't think the Steelers would necessarily be afraid of that. And I think they would love the fact that people talk about Jackson Dart's leadership. So I would still pair Jackson Dart with Aaron Rodgers. And then second round, there's probably still going to be some good interior linemen there for him. So you can kind of fix that offense. You already got the receiver in DK to pair with George. Now just, totally fix the quarterback, try and help the O-line a little bit, get that offense humming. And, we got a decent defense. TJ Watt will get us the clutch sack when we need it. And hey, maybe that's when we finally win a playoff game for the first time in like 10 years.
Okay, so all right, again, I will ask the question to both of you because neither of you answered the very poignant question that I asked, which is, what are you offering Aaron Rodgers? You have some cards to hold to your hand. He can't play anywhere else, but at the same time, you need him almost as much as he needs you. So what is the offer that you think can get this deal over the line?
If you don't mind, Eli, I'm going to just say literally whatever he asks for if I'm the Steelers. And this is not the position I would want to be in as a team, but this is the position the Steelers are in. So they cannot compete without a quarterback. They have such a team ready to compete, but they don't have a quarterback. If Rodgers asks for 40, give him 40 and put 8 void years on the deal if you have to get it under the cap. You need the quarterback, just get him in the building at this point. So I think Rodgers does still have the leverage here because I don't think they know for sure that retirement is an option for him.
So Adam's willing to give up the boat. What about you, Eli?
Yes. When Omar Khan looks at the current quarterback contract field right now, Sam Darnold is at 33.5 AAV. Derek Carr is 37.5 AAV. So if I'm Omar Khan, I'm shooting somewhere in between those two. I think I would hold that line pretty firm in that kind of 35 million range for him, where you can say, Raj, you are not the player that you were. You are still a starting caliber, and we're going to pay you more than Sam Darnold. I think Rodgers says that's okay with me.
But less than Derek Carr? You think he's cool with that?
Yes. I think
last year for record, he signed a 1-year deal with the Jets for $37.5 million. So basically exactly what Derek Carr got. So, I mean, if we're using that as a barometer point, I don't think that's unfair. I think 30 million is about where I'd have the conversation start. Mm-hmm. Depends on how much Pittsburgh wants to kind of go toe to toe with Aaron Rodgers here and say like, hey, you have nowhere else to go. If you want to play, you almost have to play for us. It seems like they're at least playing some version of hardball here with him about that. So I would expect it's less of a Datema, give him whatever he wants, but I assume it's probably something closer to 30 to 37 million, somewhere in that range. And I wonder how much in terms of guaranteed money or in terms of incentives that you can throw in there to potentially lower that AAV and save a couple money on the cap.
For context, the current cap of the Steelers is $33.6 million. Right, so there are some logistical challenges that they would have to face. Like Adam said,
Great
4
point.
years.
No, you're fine. You say, hey, Aaron, we'll give you a $40 million contract with 3 void years, and the whole thing's guaranteed because it's all a signing bonus. That's only $10 million a year you're paying him, and you just got to pay him $10 million a year for 3 years after he's done playing for you. But if he wins you a Super Bowl, you're cool with that.
Yeah, or you sign them to a 2-year deal and have that pretty much entirely backloaded with front load in terms of guarantees, and you can make it through on that front. I mean, there's plenty of contractual gymnastics we can do to get around.
The Saints are still an NFL team. The salary cap can't matter that much.
It's a very good point. Let's go over and talk about the other major signing that happened this week. Stefon Diggs signs with the Patriots. He signs a 3-year, $69 million contract with $26 million of it guaranteed. Coming off an ACL tear in Week 8 of last year. Before that, he was with Houston. Before that, he was looking pretty good. He looked like he was getting into a rhythm with Stroud before the ACL tear. Obviously, coming off of a pretty major injury, I was a little surprised to see not only 3 years, but nearly $70 million in that contract, 26 of it guaranteed. I think that was a little surprising in terms of the size of the contract. I would expect coming off of a major injury like that, that there would be more of a 1-year high AAV prove it contract rather than a team willing to hand him a pretty good size 3-year contract.
You guys ever eat Lunchables growing up?
Of course. I grew up in the 90s.
What do you mean
of course
growing
I ate
up?
Lunchables.
The pizza Lunchables. I don't know about you guys. I don't know about you guys, but on the pizza Lunchables, I would always do 2 with a little bit of sauce and cheese. And then the last one, I would load up with the sauce and all of the cheese. Is that what you guys did?
I mean, I definitely did not ration my Lunchables the same way I didn't ration my Dunkaroos icing either. It was gone way too fast.
Okay, I was the opposite. I would save, and then on the very last one, do the big dip. That's essentially what happened to the Patriots this offseason, where they spent on players, and they spent, and then they got to the end of this and said, we still have this giant packet of sauce and cheese ready to spend. What are we going to put it towards? Oh, there's Stefon Diggs. There, we need a number 1 wide receiver. Investing in him and teaching this wide receiver room how to develop as we bring in new guys. Tet at number 4. Hello. Right?
Hey, that's who I had him taken.
Right?
Yep.
Investing not only in Stefon Diggs, the player, but Stefon Diggs, the locker room leader, which by all accounts, he was in Houston this last year, was in Buffalo, was in Minnesota.
Was in Buffalo?
At the beginning, until the end.
At the beginning, yeah.
When he first joined the team, right? So, yes, are you overpaying for Stefon Diggs, the on-field player? Yes, this is, realistically an overpay. But holistically, looking at the Patriots and where they are, the money that they have to spend, bringing in a veteran like this, it makes sense to me as a GM perspective.
So I hadn't heard the leadership argument made for this yet. And if that turns out to be true, then yeah, the contract does make a little more sense to me. But honestly, I shouldn't even say that because the contract isn't that ridiculous to me in general. Because, and a lot of the details aren't out there yet in terms of like the year over year. But in terms of 26 million guaranteed, that puts him at the same level as what Darnell Mooney got guaranteed a year or so ago. So it's not a huge amount. It's not even half of the contract. It's almost a third of the contract. I would assume, most of the guaranteed money is over the first 2 years. I don't think they're going to expect him to be a superstar this year. He tore his ACL middle of last season. It's probably going to be middle of this season before he's like actually back on the field, and probably end of this season if he actually feels comfortable. So I don't think they're going to expect too much out of him this year. They probably don't expect too much out of the team this year. So that works for them because, the team, they're adding some good pieces. They absolutely are. They've got a better coach. They're going to be competitive this year, but they're not going to be winning the Super Bowl this year. So put most of the guaranteed money over this year, next year. Next year is when he's going to bring more than just leadership. He's actually hopefully going to be a great player for you again. And then third year, if he's not, cut him and you barely lose any money. Or if he is, keep him on the team and fine, he's worth the money.
I don't know about you, but 23 million for what you just described is almost a lost year there. Does not feel like maybe the best strategy to go on.
Not
now,
when you got the salary cap the Patriots had. Not when you got their salary cap.
Fair enough, but it is clear that that Robert Kraft and ownership is tired of losing and they want to see a much better product on the field. So I imagine that this move, I mean, if there is something to be said, current reports say that Diggs is on track to be ready by the start of the season. Now, even if that's not by the start of the season,
he's old, man, and wide receivers tough.
And look, I'm not saying everybody, this is, best shape of your life kind of, we're in that kind of range right now. But I will say if it is something that gets him onto the field closer to the beginning of the season, well, then I think this money makes sense. If it's the way that you described, then I think this is a year early for you to go in on a wide receiver who's on the wrong side of 30. Now, yes, he looked good. He looked good last year. He has always looked good when on the field. He's got 6,000 yard seasons. Like he has been a really good wide receiver. For a team in New England that has been so just vacant in the talent on the offensive side of the ball world, him coming there and pairing up with Drake May, I think this is I think more than anything, this is hey, we need you to bridge Drake May from who he is now to like when we're ready to run in a year or two. And
this
is the contract that gets you there. All right, let's get him some version of an alpha wide receiver one, especially one who wants to call himself and treats himself as an alpha wide receiver one like Diggs does.
Who's
okay,
earned
great.
it
Now
too.
we can. What's that?
Who's earned it too? He is.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, every wide receiver one wants to be a wide receiver one perpetuity, regardless of when age and decline comes into play. So I think this at least gives you the bridge. This bridges okay, how can we get Drake May to start throwing to a genuinely competent wide receiver, get him going on that front, and start building into his progression. So that way, in a year or two, when Stephon Diggs is essentially, okay, now we're past him now, we're ready to bring in new talent. Now we have the quarterback to make it.
And let's not forget that I believe Josh McDaniels is their offensive coordinator now. Yes?
Yes, he is. He's back.
Right. And so when you look
never cleaned out his office.
Pardon?
He's never cleaned out his office. They just left it there.
He'll be there forever. Third stint. Right? You look at the system that he runs and the players that he has, he needed an outside man-beating wide receiver, which Stephon Diggs still is. When you look at the Texans' offense last year, it's hard to separate the wide receiver skill from what was happening on the offensive line, right? And often the correlation was tough, not just because the O-line was so bad. There's a stat at Fantasy Points Data called Average Separation Score, and they call it AST score, which measures a receiver's ability to separate on routes that they actually run. So it takes out screens, bubbles, things like that. And Stephon Diggs was 26th in the league last year in average separation score. Even better, he was 17th in the league on wide receivers with over 100 routes run when lining out wide. So as an outside X receiver, Stephon Diggs still very functional in this league. Even if he takes a small step back and he's 26th, you have Pop Douglas in the slot, bring in another wide receiver. Tet, you could go Jalen Royals in the second round, right? Higgins, Iowa State. There are options for you to fill out this room. Now you have some real options, good tight ends, right? For the Patriots, you have some real options for Drake May to develop and learn how to run an NFL system, which I think is just good GMing. Set up your rookie quarterback with proven talent, right? That he knows where they're going to be and can let it rip. I think that's just good GM.
And I also think going along with that, go ahead, Em.
No, I was just going to add real quick to what Eli said. I think trading back to you could trade back and still get Tet McMillan. You could trade back to like 15 or something and actually get a good haul of picks. Probably end up with another starter from this draft if you trade back and still take Tet or Emeka Ibuka or Matthew Golden out of Texas. Like, I think we're starting to realize there are some receivers in this draft. There's no Jamar Chase. There's no Justin Jefferson outside of maybe Travis Hunter. But there are some receivers. And I think with Drake May showing you what he did last year, you have to build around Drake May. You have to give him the tools to be successful. And a receiving core of Stephon Diggs, Pop Douglas, and Matthew Golden. Well, I see a slot receiver. I see one of the best number 2 receivers in the league who can work every single route. And I see Matthew Golden who can stretch the field. And just watching the way this guy moves, I know we'll get into more of our scouting episodes later, but just watching the way this guy moves, like, oh, he is maybe special ability. So I think,
and we're also not taking away the fact that, I mean, there is a chance where Travis Hunter is available at number 4, and the Patriots could conceivably go at him right there on the spot. We've zoomed out from this draft, but I mean, if Shedeur Sanders goes to the Giants at 3, or Abdul Carter goes, 2 quarterbacks and Abdul Carter go, we are sitting at a Travis Hunter sitting there.
We are sitting pretty. Give me Diggs, Pop, and Hunter. We finally have a semblance of offense on New England here.
I don't think there's any way Hunter makes it to 4.
I think that's a foolish sentence, but we'll save that for our draft talk as we have more. Save it for it. Tease the listeners a little bit here. Let's talk about some of the other wide receivers that are currently still available. Like we just talked about Diggs. There are a couple other 3 veteran wide receivers out there still available. Let's kind of talk about what you'd offer them if you're sitting across the table from them trying to negotiate. Let's start with Amari Cooper. Similar to Diggs, he was basically the Diggs replacement midway through the season last year, or at least he was supposed to be, when he came over to the Bills, but never really clicked with Josh Allen, which I think is a little alarming because there's not many quarterbacks you'd want throwing you the ball than Josh Allen in today's NFL. So, and as we've seen the wide receiver market kind of fluctuate, there's been a lot of short-term 1-year contracts, but those contracts have been good sizes. I think Amari Cooper becomes one of the more interesting free agents still available here. I think there's gas still left in the tank. It's just about finding the right player or team and fit. His previous AAV was $20 million last year. I would expect, especially after how poor last season went on the Bills, that I wouldn't expect $20 million on the free agent market, at least at this point. I think more than likely he's going to have to take a 1-year contract. I don't think anyone's going to offer him a multi-year deal at his age and coming off of last year. For me, I think a 1-year, $15 to $16 million contract makes sense. Whether or not that's something he would be willing to sign, if he's willing to take a 25% cut or a 20% cut in his paycheck is up to him. But I think somewhere around that spot makes sense to me if I'm trying to lock down what I would hope is my wide receiver 2.
Well, right now, the only receiver making either 15 or 16 a year, at least according to the most recent data on Over the Cap, is Cooper Kupp making 15. And I do not think Amari Cooper showed what Cooper Kupp did last year. I think Cooper Kupp is over the hill. And as incredible as he was, the athleticism is starting to wane a little bit, it would seem. So that's why he's not getting the same contract he used to. But
I mean, Devontae got $22 million, Devontae got $22 million a year. Are we
comparing Amari to Devontae at this point?
No, I am not. I'm just saying in terms of other wide receivers out there. I mean, we bring up the Slayton. The way that I priced that in was bringing up Slayton and
at 12
Josh
a year.
Palmer.
Yeah.
At 12 a year, at 12, 13 a year. If I'm Amari Cooper, I want more than those 2 players. And if that's the case, then I'm looking at something in the 15-year range. Then I'm looking at something in that range. And I might be patient and wait a little bit. But
historically, Amari absolutely deserves more than Slayton or Josh Palmer. But as of this past year, no. Josh Palmer and Darius Slayton were better players this past year, or at least produced more. And Darius Slayton, in his case, he produced more with a much worse quarterback situation. So I don't even know if I can give Amari 12 right now. Now, if I'm a team that just needs a number 2 or number 3 receiver and we have the cap space, yeah, throw him what he needs to get him in there, because that's going to plug the hole. And if you plug the hole, it's going to be worth whatever you pay for it. But if you're just out there considering receivers and you see, oh my God, Amari Cooper's still on the market. Well, what does he want? 12 million. Let's do it. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't go there.
I think as a GM, 1 year, 15, 16 million makes sense. Make it very incentive laden, right? 7 million guaranteed, put a lot of the money into incentives, make him produce and earn the money on the field for me. Because in Buffalo, that was not the incentive, and we saw what happened for him.
Great point. Let's talk about let's move on to Keenan Allen, another fellow veteran wide receiver here. I mean, he all
right, Eli, you can go first on this one.
Exactly. I was going to say, when he looked cooked at the beginning of last year, but he finally started to find a rhythm with Caleb Williams in Chicago. The second half of the year, he was a genuine option, a legitimate option for the Bears, and was producing at a pretty good clip. He obviously remains unsigned in this offseason. Eli, if you are a GM, what are you offering Keenan Allen to potentially add to your roster?
I would look in the 2-2 ball range, somewhere in that $10 to $12 million range. This is a supply and demand scenario where we have aged veteran receivers on the market, and there are a lot of them. We just talked about one. I'm not saying Nelson Agholor is in the same tier, right? But a veteran player, right? There are guys out there, Deontay Johnson, right, who is a whole different scenario. But the supply is high for this type of player, so their price is going to be driven down. So I would, same sort of deal, 10 to 12 million incentives. I would also put a weight clause in there to make sure he's playing receiver and not tight end this year. Very important. No tight end, Keenan Allen. Please, no more.
Dave, talk to me about Tyler Lockett, similarly in the same vein. Available, a great veteran for so many years with Seattle, finally looking for a new home. I mean, if you're going to, I won't ask you to put a dollar figure on this, but I will say if you're the GM right now and you're sitting there with, let's say, 15 million worth of cap space, and you've got Amari and you've got Lockett and you have Keenan available to you right here, how would you rank them, and how would you try and approach them in terms of signing?
Well, I'm going to hang on Keenan just a bit, because I think Keenan and Amari are very similar in the sense that I would price them similarly, but they're different skill sets. Both are good route runners. For sure. One has great hands. One still has a little bit of quickness. So I kind of think overall they even out. I'd give them both a 1 year, $10 million deal. Like you said, 2-2 Atwell range. I would do that for both Amari and Keenan. Tyler Lockett, I think I'd go a little less. Just because, he's done something incredible by overcoming his size and performing consistently in the NFL. But at a certain point, when the athleticism starts to go, the size starts to matter again. And I think it's just, he's in his 30s. It's got to happen. And taking a little bit of context clues, I don't think the Seahawks, he had a decent contract, so that was part of it. But I don't think the Seahawks would have let him go so easily had they thought he still had slot receiver left in the tank. So if I was looking for Tyler Lockett, if I could get him at $6 million a year, great. I'm not sure I would do a whole lot more. And whatever team he ends up with, he's going to make a few clutch catches. And it's going to be, the announcers are going to say, oh, no one wanted him this offseason and he ended up here and now he's doing this. And it's like, yeah, that is valuable. But I don't.
I think single digits is
Tyler Lockett.
I think single digits in terms of millions, I think, is where I go on a 1 year deal. Again, similar, I'd throw it incentive laden. If he can make 500 yards, if he can get 750 yards, if he makes 50 receptions, I think I can bake in something here to make sure that he has to earn that money, so to speak. But
and it has to
again,
be incentives
if you can find him.
It has to be incentives that go with his role. So like you were saying,
sure,
especially with the catches, right. If you get over 60 catches, that's something you would put for a slot receiver who you don't expect to use that much, but still needs to be your guy.
Yep. And also something to be said about the fact that he's a veteran presence. And if you can go into a young wide receiver room, I think that could also, you can get some real benefits out of that. Let's flip over to the other side of the ball. Asante Samuel Jr., only 25 years old, surprisingly still unsigned in this free agent class. Other cornerbacks we've spoke about in our last pod have gotten paid. Adebo, 3 years, $54 million. Mike Jackson, 2 years, $14.5. Byron Murphy, 3 years, $66. Christian Fulton, 2 years, $20. So kind of showing the top end and the low end of what cornerbacks have been offered right now. Eli, Asante Samuel, like I said, only 25 years old, about to hit this spot. How much do you think it's going to take for you to sign him? This is unlike some of the players we just mentioned who are all basically trying to offer 1-year deals. I have to imagine this is a multi-year contract you'd try and offer.
Absolutely. A 3-year deal makes sense for a 25-year-old solid corner. General managers tell us how they value players. Players that go on day 1, day 2, day 3 of free agency have high valued teams in the league. Players who are still on the free agent market 3 weeks after free agency ends, the league is telling us, the fans, how they feel about this player. So we watch the film on Asante and we say, this is a good, solid cornerback. The league doesn't feel that way, right? So you look at a player like DJ Reed at 3 years, 48. We're not going to get close. Nate Hobbs at 4 years, $48 million. Right, at $12 million a year, we're not going to get close. So something like 3 for 24, 3 for 26 would make a lot of sense to me for where I would pay at this point for Asante joining my team.
Yeah, it's tough because he only played 4 games last year. And, if we take last year out of it, he's had 9 interceptions in 3 years. That's pretty solid. You wouldn't be surprised that Asante Samuel's son had some ball skills, but he's also let up 14 touchdowns in those 3 years. So it's just tough with him because he's small and you can see him being injury prone and you can see that he missed so much time last year. And you can make the argument when you're talking to his agent, I'll be honest, I have to look this up again, but I don't believe he's made any Pro Bowls, any all-pro teams. I don't believe he's been a captain of the team. There's just nothing statistically to make the argument for a bigger contract. And, they can look at the film and say, look at these great coverage reps. But there's a lot of corners in the league who can point to a lot of great coverage reps, and some of them have all pros and more interceptions last year and didn't only play 4 games. So I think he is a good corner. It's not working out for him right now. It's not his market.
Yeah, obviously, like you said, Eli, the fact that he's sitting there as long as he has, the fact that he's out there means that at least there's something lost in translation between NFL GMs and what him and his team are looking for in terms of a contract.
That's another thing. Yeah, he may be just asking for too much. Like, look, I've got 9 interceptions in the 3 healthy years, like 3 interceptions a year, that's worth this much. And teams are just like, no, we don't want to give that. So.
And it wouldn't shock me if he started. If he wants to be paid like a cornerback 1 or 2, and I wouldn't shock me if a lot of teams are looking at him as like a cornerback 2 nickel. And I think that might be where some of this, I assume some team is going to find a way of paying him like a cornerback 2. But I think that's where it's just how much you value him and where you see him on the next team is how much you're going to try and pay him now.
This seems like a really good place for a team like the Chiefs to come in, who could use a little bit of defensive back help and come in with a 1-year deal. Say, come in for us. We'll give you $12 million this year on a 1-year deal. You can come and improve your standing within the league. You'll win a Super Bowl with us, and we'll thank you for your services. This is exactly a time
and you can re-enter free agency at age 26, and you can go and sign that 3-4 year, major Byron Murphy type contract if you can still go out there and get it.
Or if you're the Cowboys, why not just trade Micah Parsons, get at least 1 first-round pick and another star out of it? Asante Samuel. Sorry, I'm annoyed with the Cowboys. We'll get back to that.
We're gonna have to save that one for another pod, a future pod, as we get into that, because it feels like you're about to go off on something, and I
got 20 minutes in me.
Exactly, that's what it feels like. All right, we'll save that one for a future one. But that just about finishes up our show for today. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you're subscribed wherever you listen to your podcasts so you don't miss an episode in the future. And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, please be sure to rate and review us. 5 stars, always welcome, just like any Lunchables if people want to send them our way. And while you're at it, be sure to follow Front Office Playbook on X, YouTube, TikTok, and Twitch to be informed of all of our live shows, scouting videos, and more. So stay up to date on everything happening around the NFL and its impact on your team. Be sure to check back in soon for a brand new episode, and be sure to reach out to us on X to tell us what topics or contracts we should tackle next. So until then, for Adam, Eli, and myself, stay safe out there, and as always, thanks for listening.